Hello and welcome back to another FPL video. Today, as we all know, football is back after the international break this weekend, and today we're going to be looking at a wildcard 4 draft. Now, it seems to be a pretty popular strategy with a lot of people doing that, so we are going to take a look at my best team if I was going to be wildcarding this week. Now, in goals, you can see we have got Ramsdale. Now, for me, I was looking more at the cheaper goalkeepers. Obviously, there's been a couple of transfers now, so the players like Ramsdale and Johnston and stuff have already dropped in price to 4.4 million. Now, the reason I'm going for the cheaper goalies is because, as you can see, with the 4.5 million and ish kind of area, like if it's 4.6, 4.7, those kind of goalkeepers, there isn't too much between them. We can see we've already had 3 game weeks, and you can see the top the top point scorer of those guys is Sells with 11 points right now, and it isn't really too much of a difference. We've got Neto down there at the bottom in 5th on 7 points, and we've also got Henderson as well, who's in 6th. You can't see that on screen, but he's also got 7 points, and he has been someone that we've actually considered to be quite disappointing so far. Yeah, again, like there's only really 4 points between Henderson being quite disappointing and being the best 4.5 mil goalkeeper. So in my opinion, I think it's just best to go for the cheaper option and just save the 0.1 million. So I was taking a look at some of the transferred goalkeepers, and we've got Johnston, Ramsdale and Kepa on screen. Now, Kepa is still 4.5 million for Bournemouth, but Johnston and Ramsdale have dropped to 4.4. Now, again, just kind of trying to have a look and see who the best goalkeeper out of these guys would be to choose. Now, you can see with the expected goals conceded, Southampton are the highest currently, but they have kind of like matched their expected goals conceded, if that makes sense. So they do have just over 5 expected goals conceded, and they have conceded 5. Johnston, on the other hand, is a little bit lower with Wolves at roughly 4 expected goals conceded, and they've conceded a massive 9 goals. I'm pretty sure that's the second highest in the league. So they're conceding a lot more goals, which I imagine is the reason why they've signed a new goalkeeper in Johnston. And then Kepa as well with Bournemouth, they have as well matched their expected goals conceded with 4.7, or at least slightly underperformed that as well. Now, when we look at the shots conceded outside the box, obviously the reason we're looking at this stat is because if a shot's taken from outside the box, it is more likely it's going to be an easier save for the goalkeeper. So that is kind of a metric that we look at when trying to understand which keepers could pick up a lot of saves. Now, again, basically even between all 3 of them. In terms of the shots conceded, 46, 46, 48 is essentially the exact same. And the same with the shots from outside the box, again, essentially the exact same with 13, 13 and 14. Now, again, like I said, there's basically no discrepancies between these guys. So who do you actually pick? Well, for me, the reason I went for Ramsdale is because of those fixtures. You can see by the expected points on the far right hand side as well, Ramsdale is just a little bit more than the other 2, and I'm pretty sure Ramsdale is the second highest for expected points in that range for those goalkeepers. So you can see with his fixtures, they've got Man United at home next, followed by Ipswich and Bournemouth. Then they have Arsenal, which is obviously going to be a difficult one, and then they've got Leicester as well. So 3 good fixtures in there where we could potentially see a Southampton clean sheet, and of course we are still expecting Ramsdale to pick up a couple of saves. Now, the problem with Kepa as well is obviously he's only on loan to Bournemouth, which means the next game in match day 4 they are playing against Chelsea, where he's not going to be able to be eligible to play because obviously he's a lone player. So there's really no point in picking Kepa, but it was just someone I wanted to look at. Now, next up, looking at our defenders, we have went for the double Liverpool defence. We've got Trent Alexander-Arnold and we have Andy Robertson in there. Now, as you can see on screen, the reason we've went for these guys is because they're basically the best in their position this season so far. You can see by goals conceded, both of them are first because Liverpool haven't yet conceded a goal, and they're the only team who haven't done so. So that's 3 games and 3 clean sheets. Both of them are doing very, very well in terms of just defensive points. And then in terms of attacking, in terms of like key passes by defenders, Trent is sitting in first, Robbo in third. I believe it's only Pedro Porro who's ahead of Andy Robertson. Obviously he's got difficult fixtures in the next few, which is why he's not being considered. Big chances created by defenders, we've got first and second for Trent and Robertson, and then of course X points by defenders. Over the next 5 games, Robertson takes the lead, followed by Trent Alexander-Arnold. So both of these guys are expected to do very, very well, and they have done so at the start of the season. So we're going for both of them. There's really no reason to pick between them both because they both look absolutely fantastic. So both of them are in the team. We've also got Robinson in there, who I don't really think needs too much introduction. He's been one of the best 4.5 million defenders so far, and his fixtures are continuing to be quite good, so we're keeping him in there. Now we've also got, as you can see on the bench, Konza. Now I was really torn between Konza and going for Rico Lewis for Manchester City, and in any other terms I would probably go for Rico Lewis, but the reason I'm not is because of his Champions League games. We don't really know what's going to happen. Is he going to be benched or is he going to be playing in the Champions League? And if he's going to be the main right back for the Champions League, it means there's more of a chance that Walker plays in the Premier League. Now, if we're looking at the expected points between Konza and Lewis over the next 5, Lewis is really just a little bit ahead with the 0.7 extra points than Konza. So for me, I've decided to go for Konza, and the fact that we know he's nailed, we know he's not going to have minutes managed due to the Champions League, or at least he probably shouldn't. And the Villa defenders seem to be very high up in terms of the expected points. I believe it's 3 of the 4 top expected points for defenders are the Villa players over the next couple of games. So we're going for Konza, mainly for nailed-on-ness. Is that the right word? It might be. And then Lewis is going to take a back for now. If we end up getting more, obviously as we wait a couple of weeks on, we'll get more news, more info on what's going to happen with Lewis's minutes. And at that point, obviously, we can then transfer him in. Now, in midfield, we have got the threemium in midfield of Salah, Palmer and Saka. Now, for me, I really don't think there needs to be too much explanation with these guys. All you really need to look at is the fixtures, because we know how good they are. We know how well they can do. Obviously, Salah has matched Haaland so far, despite Haaland scoring 2 hat-tricks in the first 3 games. So, for me, definitely someone I'd want to go for these fixtures that he does have, because these fixtures are still really nice over the next 5. Palmer as well, someone who done well, I believe in game week 2 it was, not so much in game week 3, I believe it was only 6 points he picked up, but over the next couple of weeks he does still also have really nice fixtures, and again over the next 4, definitely someone I would be worried about if I didn't own them. Now Saka does have some difficult fixtures, but for me I think he's someone you're going to want from game week 6, so I'm just saving the transfer here if I was on a wildcard 4 to not have to bring him in. I think you're going to want triple Arsenal. Now, we've obviously got Leicester, Southampton and Bournemouth for Arsenal, so you definitely are going to want the triple up. Are you going to be able to save 3 transfers just for that? I think there's a lot of other players you would want in game week 6, like Mbuemo and other players like that. So for me, I think just having an Arsenal player right now, someone that can do well in any fixture, is just going to be a bonus, especially with the Spurs game. He has got a good record against Spurs, even though it is away from home. I don't think it's one I would rule out him doing quite well in, even though they are both away fixtures. I think it is just worth it to try and save that transfer so that you then have him for Leicester, Southampton and Bournemouth. Now in this team we've also got Eze and Mitoma. Now Eze I think is just someone you want to keep probably long term. He has a game against Leicester at home where I think he could easily do really well. Obviously it was a little bit upsetting in game week 1 and 2, but his stats were his underlying stats were still really good, and obviously it paid out in game week 3 with the 10-pointer. So he's still definitely someone I want to look at and obviously get in that team. Now the one I wanted to look at was Mitoma. Now he is the Brighton midfielder of choice for me. I think the other one would be Minty, who I'm seeing in a lot of drafts. Now looking at them both beside each other, obviously Minty is I believe $1 million cheaper than Mitoma is. However, looking at the stats beside them, I just think Mitoma looks a little bit more attacking. Obviously, he's scored, Minty hasn't scored, but Minty has more assists. In terms of XG, Mitoma takes that, and he actually takes it in XA as well with expected assists. Now, Mitoma's had more shots on target, and they've both created the most chances. So I think just by looking at the stats, there's obviously more stats than just the 4 of these, but I think looking at the stats, Mitoma looks a lot more of a goal threat, but Minty looks a lot better creatively. And then even if you look at the XA, Mitoma is still slightly more for expected assists. So even if Minty does look more creatively in other stats, Mitoma has still got the highest expected assists. So for me, I think Mitoma does just edge it. If you're looking at your team and you want to try find $1 million to upgrade somewhere, then sure, just go for Minty instead, because it's not a huge gap between them both. But for me, I do think Mitoma does just edge it over him. Now up front we have obviously the big gap in here means we do not have Haaland. That's how we're able to afford the 3 premiums. But for me, the reasoning that we don't have Haaland is because I don't think that we should be getting distracted by the fact that he's a £15 million player and is like, obviously he's scored a double hat trick, but when you're looking at his stats, he's massively overperformed his XG, like more than double. He has got the highest in the league so far at 3.62, but if he was going to be matching the stats, he should only have 3 goals right now, potentially 4, but he has 7. Now, obviously, it's Haaland. We know how good Haaland is. We know he can score in any game, in any situation. But the whole argument at the start in game week 1 was, do we have him as a 15 million asset, or is he too expensive and we can we match it with cheaper players? Now, looking at his fixtures, do you want a £15 million player playing against Arsenal and Newcastle? 2 difficult fixtures where you're very likely not going to captain him. For me, I think it's a no, and I do believe in those fixtures. Salah, Palmer and Saka are going to be able to match / outscore him. So he's definitely someone that you're going to want in game week 7. Now they have a very, very good run. You can see it with Fulham and Wolves. They have a lot more green fixtures after that as well. So you definitely want to be booking in a transfer for game week 7 to get in Haaland. But for me, now that you've got the opportunity to get Haaland out without having to use 2 or 3 transfers, I definitely would be taking it. And going without him for the next 3. Now obviously he could do quite well against Brentford, but for me I think it's worth the risk to go for the other premiums in midfield, to try and outscore him over the next 3 game weeks and then bring him back in, because obviously you're going to captain him for like 5 game weeks once that Fulham game comes around in game week 7. Now for game week 5 and 6 you do have plenty of other options. You can see here on screen we do have Salah for game week 5. He plays against Bournemouth at home. That's your captaincy right there. And then game week 6 you've got Saka against Leicester at home, and I believe Salah also has a good fixture. Maybe Nottingham Forest away, I could be wrong on that, but that is basically what we're trying to do here, is outscore Haaland. And you're not going to captain him, so I don't think he's really going to be worth the 15 million price tag no matter what he does. So I wouldn't get reeled into the fact that he has scored a double hat trick in the last 2 games. I think you just got to play it smart and bring him in for game week 7. And that is the full team. Obviously with the bench it doesn't matter too much. My 4 million defenders, Harwood, Bellis, I just quite like him. It probably would be Wout Fast, but he's a little bit more. He's now 4.1 million, so going for Harwood, Bellis. Fabianski is the goalkeeper. Obviously he came on for Areola, so he's just probably the most likely to end up being a number 1 goalkeeper. Again, it doesn't really matter because Ramsdale is going to be playing basically all of the matches. Now at the striker position, I do have Wee Joe in there, but I'm pretty sure he has moved to the Turkish league, so obviously wouldn't go for him anymore, but that is just something to keep in mind. Obviously that position's never going to get played, so it doesn't really matter too much who goes in there. But that is the team. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments. Do you agree with the no Haaland situation over the next 3 weeks and then bringing him back in? Make sure to subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you all in the next video.